I'd like to recognize Congressman Fitzpatrick, who's sticking with us. So, first of all, I'd like to thank this committee for the extraordinary work that you did with all of the stakeholders to get a long-term FAA reauthorization bill passed. It had been a long time since that had happened, and everyone came together, and the votes that you received, we were 393 in the House and 93 in the Senate. This is a clear mandate to move forward with very important safety provisions for our aviation system. And among those was our issue of 10 hours rest for flight attendants. Now, this was an issue of safety, health, and equality. Safety, we had been raising the flag on this issue for more than 30 years, identifying flight attendant fatigue, getting through other FAA reauthorization bills, the Commission of Fatigue Studies, 7 in fact, that determined that flight attendant fatigue does exist, and the best way to combat it is rest. And yet, still here today, we don't have that in place. Health. Harvard conducted a flight attendant health study, and the results of those studies were published in the summer of 2018. It determined that flight attendants have, on average, between 50 and 400% greater rates of cancer than the public, even though they are a more healthy population. And one of those factors that contributes to cancer, to the greater rates of cancer, is interrupted rest. Now, equality. We are the only country in the world with aviation regulations that do not harmonize flight attendant and pilot rest. This is an issue of equality. So we worked with you very closely to write language that would make it very clear and very simple, and I believe you were very clear with the Deputy Administrator earlier that it was intended that the rule would be changed within 30 days, simply changing a 1-character 8 hours to a 2-character 10 hours to address flight attendant fatigue, the major mitigating factor that can address flight attendant fatigue by increasing that minimum rest by 2 hours. For whatever reason, that did not happen. We had a government shutdown, we had a grounding of the 737 MAX, and just now, right before this hearing, days before this hearing, we have an announcement of a rulemaking. Now, I appreciate the attention of the newly confirmed Administrator Dixon on this issue, but there is not a need for a rulemaking on this. This has been litigated, it has been heard, it has been studied. There is a determination that this is a safety loophole in our aviation system and it needs to be fixed. Flight attendants do not understand how you can write such clear language and not get this in place. We have been negotiating with the airlines to put this in place in the meantime. And we have successfully negotiated 3 new contracts that have the 10 hours rest. In each of those contract negotiations at Miami Air, Frontier, and PSA, the 10 hours rest was implemented within a matter of weeks, and there was no cost associated with it in the negotiations. Delta Airlines, hours after the rulemaking process was announced that they would be implementing the 10 hours rest, as is defined in the law, by the February bid month, this coming February bid month, demonstrating that this can be done in a very short period of time. This is not complicated. We still have flight attendants who are out there reporting to us that they have forgotten how they traveled home, how they drove home from their trip. They were pulled over by the police saying that they were driving as though they were impaired, when only moments later they were conducting very serious safety functions that the FAA currently says they were safe to perform, but they were impaired. Others have written to us, why do we have to go through drug testing when the FAA has rest rules that has us impaired doing our work? Others say, I had a medical emergency on board, I had a long day and a short night, and thank goodness there were medical personnel on board because I didn't have the mental capacity to address this or to address the conflicts between passengers or to conduct CPR to save a life. This is serious. We're safety professionals, we're aviation's first responders. Fatigue exists. You gave very specific instruction to the FAA, and this needs to be implemented right away. Now, we are talking with the FAA. This rulemaking will move forward, but we would ask that you do everything in your power to get this to be expedited. I did hear the Deputy Administrator talk about an emergency order of rulemaking, and this seems to be a topic that is ripe for that. So thank you very much. I'd like to talk on many more provisions and answer your questions throughout the testimony.
Thank you.